Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Power Vacuum. I'm your host, Belmont, and we have a development in another video game movie from MovieWeb. Amazon picks up Sydney Sweeney's new action video game adaptation, although they should say new video game adaptation starring Sydney Sweeney, because I don't think she had anything to actually do with creating this. But let's get into the article. The split fiction video game hadn't even been released before its movie adaptation was announced. Like players blowing through the levels of the hit couch co op game by Hazelight Studios, things quickly moved forward with the movie. As Sydney Sweeney was the first name attached to the project, followed by director John M. Chu. Now, the project had advanced to the next level. I'm sorry, I thought it was a continuation. Now the project has advanced to the next level as a studio has officially picked up the movie and will be moving forward in active development. Variety reported that Amazon MGM Studios has picked up Chu's split fiction movie for development. Along with Sweeney and Chu, the film has also landed its writers, with Deadpool and Wolverine's Rhett Reese and Paul Wernick penning the script. It hasn't been revealed how much of the script has been completed yet. Dimitri M. Johnson and Mike Goldberg on Story Kitchen and Chu Studio Electric Somewhere are producing. Joseph Fares and Oscar Wolantis of Hazelight Studios are executive producers. So I'm going to pause for a minute. Uh, no, actually, I won't. I'll continue. I'm going to come back to this point, though. Even in early development here at Hazel 8, it was clear how much potential Split Fiction had to become a kick ass movie. Wolantis said in a statement following the announcement, of course, you're going to keep using the name of the person who I can barely pronounce. We Where was it? Yeah. We now know it's got a shot of becoming something truly special with such an amazing creative team behind it. John M. Chu, Sydney Sweeney, Rhett Reese, and Paul Wernick, together with Story Kitchen, have all been champions and true fans of this project since day one. And we can't wait to see their vision for this movie come to life. We look forward to holding them to that and working together to bring Mio and Zoe to screen. What's Split Fiction about? All right, let's jump back real quick. When they announced this movie before the game came out, that means that they had already struck a deal with studios probably during the development of the game. And I don't like this trend of things being made into movies before they're established because that was what happened with Mickey 17, right? Mickey 7 was in the process of being written when a studio picked up the concept and began working on the movie. So the book wasn't even out, wasn't even finalized. The last chapter hadn't been written, and they had started writing a movie. You cannot be accurate to the lore or the source material if the source material is incomplete. Mickey 17 was a fucking disaster. It was abysmal compared to the novel, Mickey 7, which is actually an excellent entry in the Chronicles of Sci-Fi, and it's relatively new. So the fact that they made this movie without knowing the established lore or having it all completed in front of them is kind of what I think led to it being mediocre to shit. And I don't care how good of your team is, if you don't have access to the source material and you don't have access to the lore as it stands, you run the risk of making a Mickey 17 mistake. But that's my 2 cents on the matter. I don't actually know anything about Split Fiction, so let's find out what it's about. I know it's a two-player game, like exclusively, in the way I think Brotherhood, the game where you play two brothers. You have to play two characters, or two different people have to play it, unless you're really good at playing um, with two remotes at the same time, or two controllers. But what is Split Fiction about? Following the tremendous success of Hazelight's It Takes Two, which is also getting a movie adaptation. It Takes Two. I think that's the game I'm thinking of, and I was calling it Brothers or Brotherhood. I think I was just wrong. Where was I? Split Fiction was once one of the most anticipated releases of 2025. The story follows Mio and Zoe, two authors who become trapped in their sci-fi and fantasy worlds when someone tries to steal their ideas. The game makes the most of co-op mechanics requiring two players to overcome the various puzzles in fantasy and sci-fi worlds. It hasn't been confirmed whether Sydney Sweeney will play Mio or Zoe. She more closely resembles Zoe from the game, so that is the more likely option out of the two, but anything can happen in a movie adaptation. The studio is actively searching for Sweeney's co-star to play Mio. Hazellight Studio is going to be incredibly busy over the coming years, as well as Split Fiction, and whatever its next video game is going to be, the studio is also adapting its two other most beloved games into movies. The aforementioned It Takes Two is struggling to progress beyond the tutorial. Okay, that's a play on words. As the film has remained in development limbo since its announcement. Hazelight's previous game, A Way Out, is also being adapted into a movie, but even less is known about the state of that project. Okay, well there you have it. They're snatching up every video game property they can get their hands on. Comics are on their way out, video games are on their way in. Uh While video game movies have always been kind of present and in the background, Tron was probably the first video game based movie. It wasn't based on a real video game. They did make a video game based on the movie later, but it was very much in the realm of video games. Then there's, The Last Starfighter, which is a fictional video game in a movie used to recruit starfighters. Then there's war games, and video games have always been there. Super Mario Brothers, I think, was the first true adaptation of a video game, and it was not well received by audiences, not well received or liked by the studio, and it left such a sour taste in Nintendo's mouth that they did not allow a major motion picture until the new Super Mario Brothers CGI movie that just came out last year. So you're looking at almost 30 years of Nintendo saying that you can't make good video game movies. Uh Lara Croft Tomb Raider starring Angelina Jolie was pretty big, and Battleship is a board game, but that has a huge cult following for some reason. But we're in the era of video game movies. Expect to start seeing adaptations left and right because comic books are on their way out, the superheroes on their way out. People don't um it's not necessarily so much the fatigue has set in, it's just that they became formulaic and therefore the studios got lazy. If Superman and Fantastic Four don't do exceedingly well at the box office coming up, you could probably go ahead and bet that superhero movies are going to take a sideline. They'll probably never stop making them because they never really did once they started. But there's definitely going to be less incentive to make them, less exposure. They're going to stop making these 100, 200, 300 million dollar movies. But video games are quickly approaching it. And this is proof. You've got these small, effectively indie, or I don't know, are they considered double A at this point? They were basically indie games. They might still be considered an indie game or an indie studio, but they're snatching up everything and they're going to start making movies of everything. It has potential to be good. The premise of this game sounds interesting, where it's a sci-fi and fantasy worlds happening at the same time. So maybe the studio is known for making, challenging two-player games. Whether or not they actually are able to adapt it without the source material being complete, that's another story, but we'll just have to wait and see. We'll just have to wait and see. I don't like the idea of, I keep saying that. I'm getting redundant here. That's all I have for this story. This is your host, Belmont, signing out.